Welcome to The Explainer. You make hundreds of choices every single day, from what you're going to eat for breakfast to how you spend your money. We're about to see how every one of those little decisions is actually part of a much bigger economic story. And we'll start with a super simple everyday purchase.
I know, it seems like just breakfast, right? But that smoothie in your hand is actually a perfect little window into a huge field of study that influences everything, from your grocery bill all the way to major national debates. So what is this powerful way of looking at the world?
To really get it, we're going to put on what I like to call a unique pair of economist glasses. I promise, once you start seeing the world through this lens, you'll never look at your daily choices the same way again.
So what is it really? At its heart, microeconomics is basically the science of decision-making. It zooms way in on the behavior of individual people and individual businesses to ask a really fundamental question. When you can't have everything, how do you choose what to do with your time, your money, and all your resources?
And this really lays out the two sides of the economics coin perfectly. Microeconomics takes a bottom-up approach. It looks at the individual trees, like, say, the price of your smoothie, to understand the whole forest. Its counterpart, macroeconomics, does the opposite. It starts from the top down, focusing on the big picture stuff, like national income, unemployment, and inflation.
All right, so let's stick with that bottom-up view for a minute. Because at its core is this one single problem that every single one of us, from students to CEOs to governments, has to deal with every single day.
And there it is. This is the basic conflict of being human, at least from an economic point of view. We all want more than we can actually have. And because of this scarcity, we are forced to make choices. And every time you choose one thing, you are by definition not choosing something else. And that something else, well, it has a value.
Okay, this right here, this is one of the most critical ideas in all of economics. You can think of it as the hidden price tag on every single decision you make. It's kind of like the ghost of the choice you didn't take. It's all about those unseen alternatives, the paths not taken. When you bought that smoothie, you didn't just give up a few dollars. You gave up all the other things you could have done with that money instead. And that leads to this crucial idea.
Let me give you a classic example. Let's say you go to the movies. It costs you, what, $20 and 3 hours of your time? The cost isn't just the $20. The opportunity cost is the 3 hours you could have spent studying for a huge exam or working, or even just spending time with family. It's the value of that next best thing you gave up.
Okay, so now we get it. We're all out here making choices, weighing these invisible costs. But what happens when millions of us are doing this all at the same time, in the same place? Well, that's when we get what's called a marketplace. In any market, you've got this natural tension, right? It's like a constant tug of war. We, the consumers, we want high-quality stuff for the lowest price possible. But on the other side, the producers, they want to sell this stuff for the highest price they can get to make the most profit. So how does the market figure this all out?
So first up, let's look at it from our perspective, the consumer side. This is what we call the demand curve. And it's pretty intuitive, right? If the price of a new video game drops, way more people are going to want to buy it. This simple relationship is a fundamental part of how any market works.
And then, on the flip side, you've got the supply curve. This shows the producer's point of view. If the price for that same video game goes up, well, companies are way more motivated to produce and sell more of them because, they can make a bigger profit. So you've got buyers pulling one way, sellers pulling the other. Where does it all land? Well, that sweet spot where the two curves cross, that's called market equilibrium. This is the kind of magical point where the number of things producers want to sell is exactly the same as the number of things consumers want to buy. It's the concept the famous economist Adam Smith called the invisible hand of the market. So you might be thinking, okay, that's cool for the price of a video game, but how does this little dance of supply and demand connect to the big stuff, the huge economic headlines we see on the news every night? Well, the link is actually surprisingly direct.
Let's take a really common, often debated policy, raising the minimum wage. This is a perfect way to see how micro choices and behaviors build up to create macro effects that impact the whole country.
So let's break down how this works. On the micro level, the small scale, some workers, they get a bigger paycheck. Great. But maybe a small business owner now has higher costs, so they might have to hire fewer people or even raise their prices. Now zoom out to the macro effects. All those individual raises can lead to more consumer spending across the nation, which is great for the economy. But all those individual price hikes, if they happen on a large scale, could contribute to inflation.
So, is raising the minimum wage a good thing or a bad thing? See, that's the trick. Microeconomics doesn't really give you a simple yes or no answer. Instead, what it does is give us a framework, a set of tools to analyze these really complex trade-offs. It shows us there are winners and losers, and that these tiny micro-level changes can have huge ripple effects that become macro-level outcomes.
So think about the journey we just took. We started with something as simple as buying a smoothie, and we worked our way through these core ideas of scarcity and opportunity cost, then the dance of supply and demand, and we ended up talking about complex national policies.
The whole point is that once you have these economist classes on, you start to see the hidden logic behind everything. So the next time you make a decision, any decision at all, try to think like an economist. Ask yourself about the opportunity cost. What's the invisible price tag? And what could you have done instead? Thanks for joining us.